Ireland, at the end of World War I, was a troubled little island. After the failed Easter Rising of 1916, public opinion had continued to move away from moderate Home Rule and towards Republican independence, sparking British anger and Unionist fears. Welcome to Basic History on the Irish War of Independence. Ireland had never really prospered under British rule, but the inequality reached a critical level in the 19th century. Multiple famines, including the capital G, capital F Great Famine in 1845, which killed 1 million people and caused another 2 million to emigrate, had crippled the small island, and outside of a small landowning class and a strong Unionist core in the north, public opinion began to sour on British rule. As discussed in my last video, this first led to the rise of the moderate Home Rulers and then onto the failed Easter Rising. So check out my previous video if you haven't already to learn more about that. For the rest of you, let's move forward to post-Rising Ireland. The British crackdown after the Easter Rising had done more damage to British rule in Ireland than the 1,500 rebels could have ever dreamed of causing. Not only was the mass arrest of some 3,400 people, many of whom had absolutely nothing to do with the rebellion in the first place, seem tyrannical and overblown, it also led to figures such as Eamon de Valera, Michael Collins and Terence MacSwiney, amongst others, meeting in prison, forming connections that would go on to form the backbone of the coming Republican movement. The Republicans gathered around the political party of Sinn Féin, with de Valera as its leader, and in the general election in December of 1918, they won the majority of the Irish seats in the British Parliament, winning 73 seats and almost wiping out the Home Rule Irish Parliamentary Party. The Unionists came second with 22 seats, and just like that, Home Rule was dead. After this rather polarising result, conflict between Britain and its Unionist allies on one side and the Nationalists on the other seemed inevitable. On the 19th of January 1919, these 73 men met in the first Dáil Éireann and declared an Irish Republic. The very same day, 2 RIC men, the RIC being the Royal Irish Constabulary, a quasi-military police force in Ireland, mostly filled with Irish Catholic men who were loyal to Britain, were shot dead by the IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army, the armed wing of the Republican movement, in Solohead Beg, and the War of Independence had officially begun. The war would begin at a simmer, with the IRA spending most of 1919 gathering arms and ammunition, and the Dáil working to embed itself as the state authority and gain recognition from the British for Irish independence. This did not happen, and in September, Great Britain outlawed both the Dáil and Sinn Féin. This was probably the last off-ramp available to both sides, and with diplomacy off the table, the violence would only increase. The IRA would begin ambushing British Army and RIC patrols and attacking isolated barracks, forcing these troops to retreat to the major towns and cities, and causing much of the countryside to fall into Republican hands, setting the stage for the bloody guerrilla war to follow. The final piece of this grisly war was the formation of British irregulars, the auxiliaries and the Black and Tans, sent out into the countryside to quash the IRA. These two groups would become infamous for their drunken ill-discipline and brutality. Meanwhile, Michael Collins, who served as head of intelligence for the IRA, had set up the Squad, tasked with killing any informants or British spies, as these had been a massive problem in previous revolts and rebellions. The Squad would become very proficient at carrying out these hits throughout the war. In Ulster, meanwhile, there was serious conflict between the mostly Catholic nationalists and majority Protestant Unionists, as the North descended into a bitter sectarian conflict that saw atrocities committed by both sides. Almost 500 people would die in Belfast alone, the majority of them being Catholic. To be clear, this was very much a guerrilla war. Think Afghanistan or Iraq, rather than a conventional war with pitched battles. The IRA would ambush British troops, or a sniper would shoot an RIC trooper. In retaliation, the Black and Tans would roll into a village and enforce collective punishment, burning, looting, and killings. It was a bitter and bloody conflict. Every community was touched by the violence. Every village has a story, such as the Scariff Martyrs, where 4 young men were lined up on the bridge in Killaloe, County Clare, and shot dead by the Black and Tans. But the biggest atrocity of the war would occur on the 21st of November 1920. The Squad launched a major operation, killing 14 British agents. Later that day, the RIC would march onto Croke Park, where a game of Gaelic football was being played, and open fire on the crowd, killing 14 and injuring 65 in retaliation. This would become known as Bloody Sunday in Ireland. A week later, 17 auxiliaries would be killed in an ambush in Cork, and shortly after, martial law would be declared for much of the island. British forces would later burn Cork city centre in retaliation for this ambush. In May 2021, the British government split the country in two with the Government of Ireland Act. It promised home rule for both Northern and Southern Ireland, and promised eventual reunification between the two sides. This is the formation of the modern country of Northern Ireland. It did not, however, stop the violence, as it was not accepted by the Republicans, and the fighting would continue until an official ceasefire on the 11th of July. Peace talks would be held, and despite the optimism of the Irish negotiators led by Michael Collins, an independent republic was not attainable. Northern Ireland would remain in the United Kingdom, and Southern Ireland would be granted Dominion status in the British Empire. Full autonomy, but not independence. Michael Collins, who knew more than anyone the dire straits the IRA was in by this point, accepted these terms as the best that could be achieved, and the Anglo-Irish Treaty would be signed on the 6th of December, bringing the Irish War of Independence to an end. Over 2,000 people had died in the almost 2.5 years of fighting, with the majority of these deaths occurring in Belfast, Dublin, and the province of Munster. The treaty was divisive, as we will see, and the violence would continue as the newly born Free State had one last bloody chapter left to play out in its road to sovereignty. But Ireland would never again be ruled by anyone other than free Irish men and women. They had done the impossible and defeated the empire on which the sun never sets. For Ireland, a new day was dawning. Thanks for watching.